I remember the exact moment he said those words to me. We were sitting on the couch in our new apartment, boxers still stacked in corners from the move we made only 2 weeks ago. The curtains swayed gently in the evening breeze, and I could smell the faint aroma of our dinner still lingering in the air: roasted chicken, garlic bread, and wine. It was supposed to be a perfect night, but instead he turned to me, eyes too calm for the storm he was about to bring, and said, "I love you, but I need one last night with my ex." For closure at first, I thought I had misheard him. I blinked, trying to grasp if the wine had messed with my senses, but no, he repeated it, slower this time, as if trying to soften the blow by making it sound thoughtful. My stomach dropped. My heart stuttered. What kind of love asks for a night? With another woman for the sake of closure? I stared at him, frozen in disbelief, unsure whether to laugh, cry, or scream. The air between us turned thick. The warmth we had built over years now felt like it was slipping into ice water. I asked him if this was a joke. He shook his head, insisting it was a genuine need to end things properly before fully starting our life together. He used phrases like emotional clarity and respectful goodbye as if those were normal things to say. About an ex days before marrying someone else. I asked him what he expected me to do with that information. He just looked at me like he was hoping I would say yes, hoping I would be the cool, understanding fiancé who'd give her blessing for him to revisit his past. He called it closure. I called it betrayal. The days that followed that conversation were a blur of emotions: confusion, sadness, rage, and disbelief, all coiled tightly inside me. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him with her, laughing, reminiscing, possibly doing things he had no right to do anymore. I replayed every memory we had, trying to find signs that could have warned me. Was I blind all along? Or had he truly changed in just one moment? I had met his ex before. Her name was Alina. She was polite, confident, and always carried that unbothered, haunting kind of beauty that made you feel like she was still in control. When we first started dating, he told me they ended things mutually. No drama, no longing, just a clean break. So why now, 2 weeks before our wedding, did he suddenly need her again, even if for one night? I considered calling off the wedding, but a part of me was still paralyzed. I loved him, or at least I thought I did. I felt like I was walking a tightrope between dignity and devotion, and I didn't know which side would keep me from falling. I confided in my best friend Maya, who didn't hesitate to say that I should walk away. "This isn't love," she said. "This is him testing how much self-respect you're willing to give up in the name of commitment." Those words hit me hard. I had always believed love required compromise, but this wasn't compromise. It was sacrifice of my worth, my trust, my place in his life. Still, I wasn't ready to decide, so I asked him to explain again. This time, I wanted to hear everything without interruption. Maybe, just maybe, there was something I missed. He told me that Alina had been a big part of his life for over 6 years and that they never really had a chance to say goodbye properly. He said they broke up during a time of stress, career chaos, and emotional burnout. He called it a loose thread that still hung over him. He claimed he wanted to meet her not to rekindle anything, but to finally close the chapter that never had a final page. I listened silently, feeling as if every sentence was a carefully rehearsed justification for emotional cheating. Asked him, if the roles were reversed, would you be okay with me spending a night with my ex for closure? He didn't answer immediately, just looked down at his hands, then quietly said, "No." That was all I needed to know. It was hypocrisy wrapped in sentiment. It was selfishness disguised as honesty, and yet my heart still struggled. I wasn't just grieving the betrayal, I was grieving the dream we had built together. The wedding, dress in my closet, the invitations already sent. The life I thought I'd step into. I thought of my parents who had already put down deposits, my little cousins excited to be flower girls, the bridal shower my friends had planned. Could I really walk away from all of that? The night after that second conversation, I stared at the ceiling for hours. I didn't touch my phone. I didn't check social media. I didn't even cry. I was simply still, like I was observing my life from outside of it. In that stillness, something inside me began to shift. A voice I had ignored for too long began to speak, quiet but firm. It said, "You deserve better. Not just better than one night with an ex. Better than a man who would even consider asking. Better than love that came with conditions. Better than being a woman who had to compete with a ghost from the past." The next morning, I took the wedding binder off the shelf and stared at the tabs: venue, flowers, dress, menu. Every detail was planned to perfection, but suddenly, none of it mattered. Because no matter how beautiful the wedding, I'd always remember the ugliness that came before it. I couldn't walk down that aisle wondering what happened in that one last night. I couldn't build a marriage on an apology waiting to happen. So I did the hardest thing I'd ever done. I told him it was over. No fights, no tears. Just a quiet decision, handed over with the same calmness he had shown when delivering his request. His reaction? Shock. He hadn't expected me to actually leave. He thought I'd wait, understand, maybe cry and forgive. But instead, I walked out of the apartment with nothing but my keys, my bag, and my self-respect. I didn't go to my parents' house or to Maya's. Instead, I checked into a small boutique hotel a few blocks away from where we used to have our Sunday coffee dates. I needed distance not just from him, but from everyone who knew me as part of a couple. The receptionist asked if I needed help with bags, but all I had was a purse and my broken heart. As I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, silence wrapped around me like a bandage. It didn't heal, but it helped stop the emotional bleeding. I turned off my phone. I wasn't ready for the wave of messages that I knew were waiting from my mom, from friends asking about the wedding, from him, especially from him. I ordered room service and sat by the window eating pasta while the city outside moved, like nothing had happened. But inside me, a storm was rearranging everything. I started writing. Not a letter to him, not a social media post, just thoughts. Pages filled with the weight I had carried for too long. How many compromises I had made for his comfort, how many times I put his feelings first. The last night with the ex was just the final straw, but the cracks had always been there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. Writing gave me power. It turned my pain into clarity. By midnight, I had a plan not just to cancel the wedding, but to reclaim my life. The next morning, I turned my phone back on and was instantly bombarded. 39 missed calls, 17 voicemails, dozens of texts, all from him. At first, the tone was defensive. I thought we talked about this. You're blowing it out of proportion. Then it turned desperate. Please call me. I messed up. I didn't mean it like that. Let's fix this. Finally, a voice note came through. His voice was trembling. He said he had told Alina it wasn't going to happen, that he realized it was a mistake, that he missed me, that he loved me, but it was too late. Something had shattered. You can't unsay certain things. You can't erase the way someone made you feel. I replied with just one message. Closure isn't a night with your ex. It's accepting you lost the woman who loved you most. And then I blocked him. I also called the venue, the caterer, the florist, each one of them stunned but kind. Most deposits were non-refundable, but I didn't care. I would rather lose money than lose myself. I called my parents and told them everything. They were furious at him, heartbroken for me, and proud of my decision. My mother cried, not because the wedding was canceled, but because she knew how hard it must have been for me to walk away. You're stronger than I ever was, she said. That meant everything. In the days that followed, I posted a short message on social media. The wedding is off. Thank you for your love and understanding. Life goes on. I didn't need to explain more. The ones who mattered didn't ask, and the ones who asked didn't matter. Surprisingly, support poured in. Women I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me saying they admired my strength. Some even shared their own stories of last-minute betrayals and how they wished they had chosen themselves sooner. It was healing in a strange way to know I wasn't alone. But still, healing wasn't linear. I had moments when I missed him or missed what we had or what I thought we had. Memories don't vanish just because trust does, but I refused to romanticize him. Every time my heart softened, I reminded myself, this man looked me in the eye and asked permission to cheat under the guise of closure. There's no coming back from that. Meanwhile, he tried reaching out through mutual friends, asking them to convince me to talk to him. One even said, he's a good guy, just confused. But confusion isn't an excuse to wound someone you claim to love. I wasn't a placeholder for his indecision. I was the final chapter, not a prologue to someone else's drama. I spent the next few weeks focusing on myself in a way I never had before. I started therapy not because I was broken, but because I didn't want to carry his baggage into my future. I traveled solo for the first time in my life. I visited a coastal town, walked on the beach, barefoot at sunrise, ate pastries for breakfast, and let my phone stay silent for hours. It felt liberating to realize how much joy existed outside of the bubble I had built around our relationship. I also returned to painting, something I had abandoned early in our relationship because he thought it was just a hobby that won't pay the bills. But standing in front of a blank canvas again, I felt alive. I poured every emotion into color, into strokes, into images that didn't need to be explained. One day, I painted a woman standing alone in the middle of a storm, holding her ground. Maya came over, looked at the painting, and said, "That's you." I smiled. She was right. Somewhere along the way, I had become that woman. Not because I had chosen pain, but because I had chosen peace over pretending. Then came the letter. It arrived one morning in a plain white envelope, no return address. But I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from him. Inside was a 2-page handwritten note. No apologies, no excuses, just a stream of thoughts. He talked about his regrets, his confusion, his how he had never realized how much harm his selfishness had caused, how he didn't expect me to forgive him but hoped I was healing. At the end, he wrote, "If you ever want to talk, I'll always be here." I read it once, folded it neatly, and put it in a drawer. I didn't need to reply. Closure doesn't require contact. Healing doesn't require answers from the person who hurt you. I lit a candle, sat quietly, and let the past dissolve like smoke. I didn't cry. I didn't ache. I just felt whole. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't waiting for anything. Not an apology, not a reunion, not an explanation. Just being was enough. And in that stillness, I realized something powerful. I hadn't just walked away from a wedding, I had walked back into myself. A month passed, and life began to take on a rhythm. Again, not the same rhythm as before, but something gentler, slower, more in tune with who I was becoming. I went back to my old yoga studio, the one I'd stopped attending because he didn't like the instructor's new age talk. I reconnected with friends I had slowly distanced myself from during our relationship, the ones who had subtly warned me, the ones I'd brushed off. To my surprise, they welcomed me back with open arms and no judgment. "We're just glad you remembered who you are," one of them said. That line stuck with me because that's exactly what had happened. I had remembered. When you're in a relationship that chips away at your boundaries, piece by piece, it's hard to notice what's missing until you step outside of it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. I found myself laughing more, sleeping better, feeling excited about the future. Not a future that included a wedding, a shared mortgage, or promises made with crossed fingers, but a future that belonged to me, fully and fiercely. I also started speaking to a small group of women online who had walked away from engagements, or long-term relationships, or had been blindsided by betrayal. Our conversations were raw, vulnerable, but also deeply empowering. A woman approached me and introduced herself. As someone who followed my small art page online, she said, "Your painting of the woman in the storm, was that based on a true story?" I smiled and nodded. She didn't press further, but she told me it had made her feel strong at a time she needed it most. I didn't think a single painting, one I made during my lowest moment, could affect anyone else, but it did. That night, I realized something. Sometimes the pain we go through isn't just for us. It becomes something others can hold on to when their own world is falling apart. It made me think about starting a series art inspired by resilience, and so I did. I called the series Closure. Every piece in it was a chapter of my journey, painted in bold strokes and fierce colors. I displayed them locally, and the response was overwhelming. People connected with it in ways I hadn't imagined. Some asked if the story behind the art was real. I always told them the truth. Yes, it was. But I also told them the truth that mattered more. I wouldn't change what happened because it led me back to myself. Now, when I think about him, about that moment on the couch, when he said he needed a night with his ex, I don't feel anger. Anymore, I feel gratitude. Not for what he did, but for what it revealed. If he hadn't shown me his truth, I might have spent years trying to fix a love that was already broken. I might have stood at an altar smiling through gritted teeth, trying to forget the one question that haunted me. I might have sacrificed my voice, my self-respect, just to keep the illusion alive. But instead, I chose differently. I chose me. And that choice has made all the difference. I still believe in love. I still believe in commitment, and in two people building something beautiful together. But now, I also believe in boundaries. In walking away when the cost of staying becomes your peace. In silence that speaks louder than confrontation. In strength that doesn't need to roar to be heard. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this. I will never again settle for someone who needs closure from the past before choosing me in the present, because I am not a second choice. I am not a pause between pages. I am the story, and I will never forget that again.